There's Colton right there, receiving the Defensive Most Valuable Player Award from the Director of Athletics, Dr. Susan Elson, Brian Polk.
There's no better place to follow the future than on orangebloods.com and the Orange Bloods Texas football channel on YouTube. The Texas Longhorns didn't just land one of the nation's top edge prospects with the commitment of Austin Westlake Colton Vasek. They landed a player that could very well define how the 2023 recruiting class is ultimately remembered in 4 or 5 years. We're talking about a potential high-level first-year impact player in the 6'6", 230-pound Vasek, who can be an unblockable blur off the edge, despite a frame that might have typically suggested he'd be better suited in the long term as a strong side defensive end. Ultra quick off the ball, Vasek is a handful for opposing linemen who struggle to get their hands on him and then struggle to keep their hands on him if they're lucky enough to get their hands on him. A player that succeeds with both inside and outside pass rush moves, Vasek has been a game changer at the highest levels of Texas high school football. It's impossible not to notice the explosive contact he makes upon striking anyone that happens to own the football. His raw explosiveness and violent impact as a tackler are the things that stand out the most about Vasek from my perspective this season. Let's take a look at the industry breakdown of his rankings. Rivals currently has him ranked higher than anybody in the industry with a mid 4-star ranking, number 82 overall nationally, the number 7 edge prospect in the country, and the number 16 overall prospect in Texas. Meanwhile, ESPN has him ranked as a 4-star prospect, number 184 overall nationally, number 30 overall as an edge prospect, and number 30 overall in the state of Texas. On 3, slightly higher ranking than ESPN with a number 143 overall national ranking, the number 20 overall edge prospect in the country, and the number 28 player in Texas. Meanwhile, 24/7 has him as the number 199 overall national prospect, the number 25 overall edge prospect, and the number 38 overall prospect in the state of Texas. Personally, I view all of those rankings outside of the Rivals ranking as absolutely foolish and tomfoolery. Expect to see Vasek's rankings across the board rise on the national level with ESPN, On 3, and 24/7 after a tremendous senior season. It's not even over yet, but based on what we've seen from him so far this season, it would be a shock if he's not ranked among the top 50 overall prospects in the country across the board on all of the networks by the time the final rankings are in February. Among the notable offers that Vasek has during the recruiting process and the official visits that he took include Texas, which he visited officially back in June on the 14th, Oklahoma, Clemson, Oregon, and Texas Tech. He visited all of those schools officially in June. Among the schools that offered and didn't receive official visits, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Notre Dame, Stanford, Texas A&M, and USC. Some data points to know about Vasek's profile as a prospect. Nearly 40% of all 4- and 5-star defensive ends over the course of the last 2 decades from the state of Texas have been drafted by NFL teams. 54.6% of 4- and 5-star defensive ends from the state of Texas that have been taller than 6'4" have gone on to be drafted by NFL teams. And for the rare prospects that are ranked 6'6" or taller amongst that group of players, right? We're talking about 4- and 5-star defensive ends from the state of Texas, 75%. Let me repeat that again. 75% of all 4- and 5-star prospects, defensive ends from the state of Texas that are 6'6" or taller, have been drafted by NFL teams. That makes Vasek one of the most valuable prospects in the entire state of Texas, regardless of how you rank them on a state top 100 list. If you have him in the state top 5 or the state top 10, his value suggests that he's more valuable than most five-star prospects across the country, regardless of position. If you're asking me what player does he remind me of, there are a couple that jump out. The first one is probably a guy that a lot of you won't remember because he didn't play that much, but Brian Pickrell, a defensive end out of the state of Oklahoma back in 2002, signed with the Longhorns. An absolute beast on the field. He was a true impact guy right away for the Longhorns in that 2002 season. I believe he finished with 4.5 sacks on the season. Only injuries to his shoulders and his body, just in general, not being able to hold up to the rigors of college football, kept him from being an NFL player. But from a talent standpoint, off the charts. Another player that Vasek reminds me of is former Florida defensive end Jarvis Moss, who went on to become a first-round pick in the NFL draft. The frame is virtually the same. Both tall guys, 6'6" and taller, that were incredibly quick off the edge, but more than anything else, when they hit ball carriers or quarterbacks, the violent nature upon contact is the thing that stands out about Vasek, and it's the reason why he reminds me of Moss. And when you think about it, there haven't been that many five-star defensive ends, even borderline five-star defensive ends over the course of the last 20 years that have such physical profiles that are similar between Moss and Vasek. They're really rare birds. It's easy to make that comparison because there just haven't been that many guys with their physical profiles over the course of the last 20 seasons. Now, why does this ultimately matter? From my perspective, we're talking about a true super blue prospect that's worthy of a top 50 national ranking and a potential five-star label. When Braylon Shelby committed to USC earlier this year, Vasek became the only other prospect in the position in the state of Texas of this magnitude, and it was critical that the Longhorns keep him at home. I mean, we're talking about a guy that literally lives right down the street from the 40 acres. He instantly becomes the best defensive end edge prospect that the Longhorns have signed in the Steve Sarkisian era so far. Along with linebacker, this is the most important need in this class, and supplying it with at least one super blue chip prospect was a dire necessity. Now, what about expectations? We're talking about a kid that will have as small of a basement as a player than anyone in this class not named Arch Manning. I mean, at worst, we're talking about a guy that profiles to be a really good college player. His physical profile screams that he will be a successful multi-year starter for the Longhorns, and anything short of that would register as a massive disappointment. If he realizes his upside as a player, we're talking about a young man that can be a first or second round pick in the NFL draft. His skill set is also one that this year's team could have really used, which means that he projects as an instant contributor as a freshman next season for the Longhorns. Bottom line, Colton Vasek is a guy that could be a potential superstar for the Longhorns, an impact player at the most important position on the entire defense moving forward for the 2023, 2024, and 2025 seasons. I only list three because if he's as good as he potentially could be, we're not talking about a guy that's going to play college football for 4 or 5 seasons. We're talking about a guy that makes an instant impact, plays at an incredibly high level, and then goes and cashes paychecks in the NFL.